Hi everyone. First and foremost, in case you forgot how they look like, this is Yakov Henkin, the one who stayed in Leningrad, who moved to Leningrad and stayed in the Soviet Union. And the other one is Evgeny, the one who left for Germany. Eventually, in the middle of the 1930s, shortly before the Kristallnacht, by the way, Evgeny Henkin left Germany, and for some reason, he didn't go to the States like many Jews did. He decided to go back to the Soviet Union, and he reunited with his brother there. Okay, now, as I said, we stopped in Rostov-on-Don, the city where both brothers came from. And this is the city very close to the Black Sea. It's the city on the Don River. And because it's a big port city, the life there was quite interesting. And Rostov didn't really have any. Even though, let's say, it was the one of the central cities of the region, it didn't really have any pales of settlement. It was a big trade city, and Jews there, Jewish community was flourishing. The Jewish population made up at some point 13% of the entire city's population. It was quite a lot. And as I said last time, even when some administrative changes, by the way, this is the Don River, a very big, I would say, river, a very important one in all senses, even nowadays. Just some videos taken around 1900s, 1920s of Rostov-on-Don, just what the life was like in this big port city. And Rostov, even though administratively it changed, but the people of Rostov managed to persuade the Romanovs, to persuade St. Petersburg not to put in force any regulations, any restrictions for the Jews. And this is how Rostov remained a very tolerant and I would say free city with this regard. So that's why a lot of rich Jews that we can think of actually came from Rostov and the area around it. So this is the family of the Henkin brothers. Their father was the head of the big mechanical plant. They were the two brothers, and also they had a sister, Sofia. Here are the kids, the siblings. And I also told you last time that there is quite a lot of places in Rostov that are still there, so to speak. This is the house where the boys grew up. Sound is cutting off. Interesting. Well, let's try this way. If it keeps cutting off, let me know, Dorley. Not sure what it is. This is actually where we stopped last time. So this is the house. So this is not a museum. There's never going to be a museum. The Henkin brothers were just, it was not the average. I would say it was like a middle class family. They were not very rich. They had quite a lot of money. Okay, so I see Sharon says that the sound is perfect on her end. So it could be something on your end, could be something on my end at some point for sure. I'll stay. It will stay like that. And if some other issues come up, let me know. We'll see. We'll work from there. But it was not the richest family, but it was a well-respected family, and this is where we stop. So let's talk. And also, for me, this stories about Henkin brothers, it's a way to tell you more about the Jewish life outside of, let's say, St. Petersburg, and to tell you how things were in Rostov-on-Don, because there is no other reason for me to talk about Rostov-on-Don. But actually, there is quite a lot with regards to Jewish history, and it's quite interesting. For example, like, unfortunately, I have never been to Rostov-on-Don, but the building over here, by the way, this used to be, this is just a house, a random house, that belonged to a Jewish family. You can see the Stars of David there. Very, I would say, makeshift, but they're still there. This is the building of the former synagogue. The synagogue building was closed in the Soviet times and significantly rebuilt and turned into a a hospital where they treat STDs. I don't know why. I don't know if the choice of the, let's say, of the focus, specialization of the clinic was kind of deliberate that they chose STDs for a synagogue. I am not sure, but you can still see the outlines of the synagogue building. Clearly, some Moorish style. Clearly, the architect was kind of inspired by the big, synagogues of St. Petersburg, and I'm sure the uh, Budapest, maybe. So you can still see that. And um, well, the synagogue was pretty big, you can see. And according to the rules in the 19th century, well, if there was a permission to build a synagogue, there had to be several requirements that had to be met, such as there had to be at least 80 Jewish households in one concentrated neighborhood. And in Rostov, there were actually several synagogues. And before that, there were dozens of just praying homes as well. There was a Jewish school. There was and the building of the administration of the synagogue as well. And by the way, that building survived, and it is still used for the Avner or Avner School, which is a Jewish school where they combine both studying secular subjects and religious subjects as well as Hebrew. There was another synagogue, and that synagogue is still functioning in Rostov. Um, by the way, I follow an interesting Instagram account of a Rostov rabbi, and it's a very interesting account. Lots of interesting stories because Rostov happens to be a very interesting place with regards to Jewish history. And there is a lot more that I'm going to share with you. So this is the beautiful interiors of the Rostov synagogue, which is now the well the main synagogue in Rostov. And it was built before the revolution. And as I said, there were a lot of, I would say, uh, famous Jews in Rostov, and the Henkin brothers are not among those people, to be honest. For example, this unassuming house has a tablet that tells you an interesting story. I'm not sure if you can recognize the woman, but I'm sure many of you can recognize Chaim Weizmann, who was the first president of Israel. And this is his wife, Vera Weizmann. And Vera Weizmann lived in this house. She was born in this house and she lived in this house up until her 20s. After that, she went to study to Europe, and that's actually where they met. And Chaim Weizmann had to come to Rostov because he proposed to her. He had to ask permission from her parents, and the permission was given. And this is when they started off and eventually moved to the state of Israel. And yes, they were friends with other, I would say, outstanding Jews such as Albert Einstein and many, 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 many other people who were at the footsteps of the establishment of the state of Israel and helping the Jewish community throughout the times of the Second World War and also tough times in Europe. And that's exactly what this tablet says, that this is the house of the Hatzman family. It was built in the second half of the 19th century. And here, Rebecca Hatzman spent her childhood years. So she was the spouse of the first president of the state of Israel. And just one more person that is relevant to my many other tours was Boris Kamenka. Boris Kamenka, originally from Taganrog, again, south of the Russian Empire, he started off as one of the clerks at Rostov, at Azov and Azov-Don Bank, which eventually became one of the biggest banks of the Russian Empire. Boris Kamenka started as a clerk. He was just at a very, very junior position. And he from Taganrog, he moved to Rostov. In Rostov, he well, he, I would say, showed an amazing career growth, and he became the chairman. After being just a clerk, he became the chairman of the Azov and Don Bank. And after us, well, he lived in Rostov in this house. The house is still there. From what I understood, it's standing in the central street of Rostov. Sorry, I forgot the name, but well, I'm sure it can be easily found. And it is one of the most opulent buildings in the area. And everyone knew he was a Jew, and nobody cared that he was a Jew. He was one of the most respected and one of the richest men in Rostov. And it's no wonder that eventually Boris Kamenko moved to St. Petersburg. And he was one of the board members of one of the biggest banks in the entire Russian Empire. And it happened at that period, from 1900 to 1913, before, actually, okay, before the First World War started, so 1914. And this was the time when Russian economy, well, um, underwent the immense upheaval, and the GDP at some point was just like it just tripled because of the international investment in Russian economy, international trade. Those were very good years, for the Russian Empire. And then the First World War kind of came as a big, big disappointment. And after that, things went I would say sour for the entire empire. So and I found just some photos of what the interiors in the house of Boris Kamenko. Well, these are the how the interiors look nowadays, and it's quite impressive, I should say. You can't compare it. Okay, you can't compare it to St. Petersburg palaces, but it's not about that. Or maybe you can. I'm not sure. Maybe you can. At least, it looks like a proper St. Petersburg house. So maybe you can compare that. So this is just kind of to give you an idea. So those were some outstanding members of the Jewish community of Rostov. The Henkin brothers definitely were not. Yet the world knows more about the Henkin brothers than Boris Kamenka. By the way, this is this element, on this is the door decoration. It's still there. As far as I understand, this building is now kind of the office. It's a kind of an office center, and in one of the parts of the house there is the big store where they sell different construction materials, kind of a DIY store. And well, the DIY store takes good care of the interiors, and well, I think I mean, that's exactly what a DIY store should do if the state does not do it. And I like that these details, for example, still have some gilded elements. It looks like they just decided to put the plaster on top of all the gilded details to kind of preserve the gold for some better times. Well, but maybe it's not exactly right to say that nobody really knew of Henkin brothers. In fact, their uncle Vladimir Henkin, he was one of the brothers to Alexander, the father to the Henkin boys. He was a comedian, like a stand-up comedian. He became very famous during the Soviet period. So there's no sound here. There's no need for a sound, and but he performed quite regularly at a Soviet TV, which was a big deal, and nothing like this could have been possible in the imperial times, for sure. But during Soviet period, it was there were a lot of Jewish artists, there were a lot of comedians and musicians, but this is it. So Vladimir Henkin moved to Moscow, and we don't know if he really kept in touch with any of the nephews and nieces, if he kept in touch with his brothers. We don't know that at all. We know that actually there were nine children in the Henkin family. Not the I mean, the father of the Henkin brothers. He had 8 other siblings. So there were a lot of uncles and aunts for Yakov and Evgeny Henkins. But as I said, Yakov and Evgeny Henkin only had just one more sister, and that was it. And uh, it was a happy family. There are some photographs that I have been able to find on the archives of Rostov Library. Well, this is the family outing somewhere at the beach because Rostov is on the Don River, and this was kind of a small beach. It's not exactly a beach bed. It's not even. It's not a kind of a beach tent that one could hire, and I can see people some resting just on the beach. I'm not sure, so I really like this photo. Kids are definitely having fun. Well, just an interesting family photo, and I really like that the parents look like they are just about to go to the office or maybe to some official reception. Well, but things ended up quite swiftly. After the revolution, the civil war started, and Rostov happened to be one of the hotspots of the civil war. And this is exactly where the army of Anton Denikin, who was in charge of the White Army movement that opposed the Red Army movement, so that is kind of the pro-monarchist opposed the pro-Bolshevik powers, and severe fights broke out in Rostov. Denikin and the entire army, first they started kind of winning and pushing backwards the Bolsheviks, the Red Army, but eventually they realized they couldn't go any further and there was no luck. And from Rostov, they would basically escape to Novorossiysk, the port at the on the Black Sea, from where they would flee to Turkey. And the rest, many of you know, because not long ago I wrapped up a series of talks on the Russian immigration. In fact, I didn't really completely wrap it up. I just put it on hold because I am now reading about the Russian immigrants in the States and putting everything together for the series of talks about that. And there's a lot to talk about. So I just still figuring out how to put it together and make it I would say, cohesive, logical, chronologically well planned narrative. You know, that's important to me. And plus, I need a lot of visual materials for my tours, and it's not easy. Not so easy because I can't afford, I know, purchasing the copyright material. I'm trying to use the open sources materials and stuff, but nevertheless. So, and when the fights broke out between the two armies, unfortunately, within one day, and by the way, this is the footage from Rostov during the times of the Civil War, and within just one day, both parents of the Henkin boys, so mother and father, died. Uh, well, the area where they worked was heavily barraged, and they died just instantly. So and the boys the boy well the siblings became orphans within just like a almost blink of an eye, and their aunt Evgenia, Zhenya, took good care of them, and they lived together for several years. Valentin Henkin, who was a cousin to the Henkin boys, he was I would say he was relatively known. He was a scientist, a historian. So he also remembered how hard it was for the Henkin brothers, for the Henkin siblings to become orphans just overnight, and how difficult it was, and how incredibly helpful Aunt Jania was. This is the photo of the already, I would say, grown-up Henkin brothers and their wives, all reunited in the Soviet Union after Yevgeny returned. This is Aunt Zhenya. This is Yakov, and this is the daughter and the wife of Evgeny. This is Sonia, the sister, and I'm not sure who this woman is. So, but the rest, you know. And this is shortly before. I'm kind of it's not really a spoiler, I would say. This photo was taken definitely before 1938 because in 1938 uh, Evgeny Henkin would be arrested because 1937, 1938. So those were the years of the purge, and he came shortly before that from Germany. Well, there were a lot of questions, a lot of questions like why he did that. We have no idea. But let's again go back in time and I mean I'm happy that I was able to find actually I would say quite um, good quality colorized footage of approximately the same periods of time I'm talking about. So for several years up until 1925, Yakov stayed in Rostov. He worked in a facility related to the port activity, so he still works at the port. This is where he met his wife Frida. So they had a child together, one girl. And in 1925, they moved to Leningrad, and this is the house where they lived. Uh, well, just an ordinary house in Rubenstein Street house, house number 14. This is where they lived, and this is where and according to what we know, this is exactly where Yakov actually started uh, taking photographs. Uh, we don't know exactly what pushed him to this, or we don't know. But I would say that was quite a popular hobby in general in those days. And this is how Leningrad looked in around 1930s. There is, by the way, this is the Hermitage Museum. This is the Winter Palace, and it says here that the sign of Vladimir Lenin um, hovering over all of us, something like that. and brings us to and it takes us to the victory. That's basically what it says. So and well, all that I would say created a certain kind of atmosphere, obviously, in the city. However, as I said, up until Stalin times, especially I would say late 1930s, it was it was relatively comfortable to be a Jew in Leningrad. And Yakov, he was an engineer, so he worked for one of their engineering facilities, and it was, I would say, an average Leningrad family without, I would say, anything. I also like it that in 1930s you could still see a horse in the streets of Leningrad. I really like it. And this is so as I said, some in that apartment in Rubenstein Street. You may remember Rubenstein Street from my bar hopping tours back in 2021, my legendary bar hopping tours that I would say by the end would turn into bar crawling tours. Yeah, that was fun. Really, we had a blast on those tours. So this is exactly when they started taking studied photography, and this is the photo from that apartment. That's their daughter. We don't know who the boy is, and on the wall you can see photos of Joseph Stalin, and photos of Joseph Stalin are decorated. There's a flower, there's some tinsel. We don't know exactly when the photo was taken. It could have been around the New Year. So Stalin was some sort of a, Christmas tree kind of thing. And it was, well, we don't know that. But it's just interesting to see that this is not a photo of Joseph Stalin, right? This is not about that. This is about kids playing, having fun. A lot of us have photos like that. And we don't and we know that it's not like Yakov Henkin practiced some sort of stage photography or specially organized and produced photo shoots. We know that those were amateur photographs. A lot of that was just, well, a perfect moment caught, captured just, at the right time, at the right place. But sometimes it does feel like there is actually, kind of a second thought, that there's more than just a photo of the kids. And Stalin being there, watching over, and seeing all these decorations of the photos. And it does look like it was, it definitely was decorated by the kids, like clearly. And it's interesting just to see that. I don't want to draw any conclusions. I don't want to, well, I don't want to, judge. We watch, we don't judge, I would say. But I mean, it's there for a reason. He could have simply just taken photographs. He could have, kind of balanced it, and center it, the frame in a different way. So the children would be in the center, but the kids are not exactly in the center. So the focus a little bit shifted. And also you see this triangle. That's just the attribute of the, I would say, the kind of the engineer, work of him. It's also interesting that there's the collection of nudes that we have. There's only one, only one film of this type of photographs, and this is the woman on top is his wife Frida, and I'm not sure who the other woman is. And these photos, well, they're definitely staged, they're definitely timed and everything and planned, and they're not so bad. Actually, they're quite, I would say, um, well, been given really good reviews by professional photographers. But again, they were not professional photographers, none of them. And again, a lot of photographs of the everyday life. So this, by the way, a late collection of photo shoots, because here we not only do we have well, Yakov, and this is the photo. This is like 1936, 1937, because in these photos you also see Evgeny, and we know that Evgeny came somewhat around 1936. He returned to the Soviet Union, and here they are together. So and we know that in 1938 he would be arrested. So literally, there's not so really much time between the two events, and those are just, I would say, everyday photographs. People having fun in summertime, and you can never tell that those are the Soviet people. These are just the young people enjoying enjoying the good weather, enjoying a good company. We don't know their story, but it looks like maybe this is a couple, and well, there's nothing here that really, kind of tells you well, about the time, about the political regime. It's just people enjoying themselves. This one is also interesting. This is also from the collection of Yakov. Um, it says, may the great Stalin be well, or hail to the great Stalin. And I I don't know. Whenever I see this picture, I wanna, okay, we watch and don't judge. You can see a portrait of Stalin, some there at the top of the frame, and you see just people that are just enjoying skiing in a way. At least it's definitely not so easy to ski, as you see, but um again, he could have just taken photos of the ladies. Clearly, it's something, again, I would say, very uh intimate. It's just friends having fun on an outing. But for some reason, he also decided to show us this ridiculously looking inscription, almost drowning, like definitely snowed under. like literally just drowning in the snowdrift. And with all that, it doesn't really seem that Stalin is that great because it's drowning. It's clearly drowning in the snow. Again, I don't want to kind of impose my own opinion on that, but this was taken for a reason. And clearly, this does, to me, it does look like some sort of a mockery, but kind of a silent mockery. And well, but at least to me. And there will be more photographs that you will probably see this kind of a mockery or irony in a, I would say, in a more obvious way. But well, we'll get to that. I promise we will. Well, it's just an interesting photo. Or this one, um, just kind of a scene from a street. Uh, and you see people walking, and they're walking past this big I'm not even sure work of art, a poster. I'm not sure what this is. This shows you Stalin and the heroes of the of this, I would say, the Red Army. And people are not even looking at this. They're walking in the opposite direction. Like this, like family, they are talking about their, everyday life. I don't know what they're going to have for dinner, or well, what his marks were, if the boy did, I don't know, a math test well, and they don't even care about this. So, and I like it, and I think that maybe again, this is clearly, it's not just a photo of a mother and the son passing by. It's clearly way more than that. And Yakov wanted us to see Stalin and the others in, to have it in the photo. And again, I see that there is definitely more than it may appear. And yes, obviously, Yakov took a lot of photos of different demonstrations, but those were not the demonstrations, those were not the typical photos of the demonstration. They were not staged. They were not taken the way the official photographers would. It's always, kind of a photo of an onlooker, a photo of kind of a person standing and looking at this, from a corner, something like that. And there will be more photos like that, definitely. Uh, okay, let's talk about something else. Also, there is a great collection of photos of the sports event. And the Soviet Union, sport for the Soviet people was a big deal. As you know, that also was a big deal for the Nazis. And the sports photo shoots are also highly praised by professional photographers. There is motion there. There is some sense of perspective. There is life in the photos. And yes, again, it may seem that the photos had been somehow staged, but they definitely were not. It's just that Yakov actually had an eye for it. Well, I mean, this is just some, I would say, a competition, just some running competition, a big moment, a good photo. Again, everything looks almost like a professional photo. I'm not a professional photographer. I don't know much about it. Well, I've seen quite a lot of photographs. I think I have, some experience in, I would say, looking at professional photographs, but I'm not going to judge it, because I'm not a professional at all. Well, it's just nice, just really some nice, like, football session. Uh, some more football games, and this is some rural area of in Leningrad. I like this photo very much. Again, he just captured a really nice moment. I wonder why kids are all wearing white and how on earth their parents let them play in the clearly in, well, not the dirt, but it's kind of a dried mud. I have no idea how the parents let them play in the white dresses. Honestly, no idea. But you see, she's just hanging in the air, just floating in the air. Very timely. So clearly, both brothers had an eye, had a knife for photography. Absolutely. And this photo, I mean, just all of this looks absolutely perfectly timed, but it was not. It's just a split of a second kind of image, um, looking really nicely. Yeah, okay, portrait of Lenin, but nobody even cares that there is a portrait of Lenin. Everyone is focused on the game. Everyone is focused on the ball, and everyone is in great tension because of that. Some demonstration again, but you don't feel like with these photos, and the main position of the propaganda photographers would be the photos had to make you feel part of that big Soviet celebration or big Soviet propaganda. And with these photos, you never feel like you are part of it. You feel like you are just an onlooker, as if you're just passing by and looking at this somewhere from the corner, as I said. And you will feel it. You will feel it even more with Evgeny's photographs. We'll get to that for sure. Again, well, another parade. It says SSSR, so the Soviet Union. So as I said, Evgeny, he in early 1920s he left the Russian. Well, not the Russian. He left Russia. It was 1925 that we know that he had already been in Berlin, and he must have come somewhat around 1924, 1925. That's what we know from the documents. And well, it's quite interesting how he managed to leave the country. But 1920s were the years of this kind of a new economic policy. It wasn't the time of the free trade, but it was the time of the relative freedom. And one could, and the citizens of the Soviet Union could study in Europe, so they could apply for this kind of permit to leave the country to study, and that's exactly what he did. So this is how he started studying in Berlin. Well, this is the only photo I have been able to find of him during his sort of, I would say, college, some kind of years. I'm not even sure how old he was in the photos. And he was also an engineer. But as I said, we know that he only studied for a couple of years, for 2 years. Well, he had 2 more years left until his graduation, but he quit the studies. We don't know what happened, but we know that shortly after that, he switched to his musical career. He could play several musical instruments, including theremin. This is him in the lab. Clearly, according to what we see in the photos, this is some physicist lab. And in fact, he was quite versatile and he was quite good at theremin. And he also taught, he also gave music lessons and he also taught how to play theremin. Just to remind you, for those of you who were not there yesterday on my tour about Leon Theremin, and those who were on the tour, well, you liked the tour very much, and I liked it too. It was very interesting. A lot of like eye-opening details about that tour. So, theremin was invented by Leon Theremin. Again, the citizen, so to speak, of subject of the Russian Empire. This man, the story of this man is absolutely unusual and unbelievable since almost since the day he was born. Well, I'm exaggerating, but you kind of get the idea until his very last breath, which happened when he was when he was 97. Interesting. International career, millions, recognition, a prison, a labor camp, a spy scandal, and whatnot. So you can see here photos of Yevgeny playing a I think it's a trombone, right? Also playing piano. He had a small band. He he gave concerts, a lot of concerts. And at that time, Berlin was, well, it's 1920s. It was, well, the beautiful time, so-called Anne Fall, right? The crazy years, a lot of fun, a lot of freedom, well, a lot of, I would say, creative vibes in the air, and the music scene and the theater scene, the artistic scene was vibrant. Well, this is one of my favorite photos of uh, Evgeny Henkin. This is some hairdresser salon, and I like how the mannequins, the ladies' heads on the mannequins. Well, this again, this is definitely kind of a partly a staged photo, and I like it that the well next to these mannequins, the two other ladies were also wearing very trendy hairstyle. They're watching the same side. They are kind of trying to, in a way, it's not like they're tried, but they're just kind of mirroring the posture of the mannequins and how different they look and how alive they are and how way more beautiful. So I really like the idea. And well, but as I said, uh, Yevgeny Henkin became very quickly, he became some sort of well, not a star, not a celebrity, but everyone. He was the guy that everyone knows, and he would hang out a lot. We have a lot of photos taken at different parties and gatherings. This is a famous photo of a woman enjoying her lunch at a cafe. So cafes were full with people, art galleries, concert venues were full with people, and here this is. Evgeny working on theremin at a laboratory. So as I said, he also started to be an engineer and a physicist, but he never graduated. That's what we know for sure. And look how elegantly dressed he always was. And there, well, look, this is, I mean, so he did give a lot of gigs, and theremin in the 1920s, it was a big fad. It was a sensation. I mean, if you missed the tour of Leon Theremin, the recording is already there on my website, on my YouTube. You have to see this. So, and everyone wanted to learn how to play theremin. So his services were in high demand, just to put it mildly. Um, well, you can see the debut of Henkin, of Evgeny Henkin. Hmm. It's just one of the photos that we have. It could have been a selfie easily. We are not sure if someone took it or he had some kind of arranged that. So Berlin life looked quite different from that of, I would say, Leningrad. This is somewhat 1920s. A lot of bars, cabarets, restaurants, dance halls, small theaters, well, a lot of eateries. And they're full, so people are having fun, um, all sorts of fun, I would say. And Yevgeny Henkin was a big part of it. Was a big part of all the fun. And well, I would say. By the way, the video is quite long. It's like originally, if you go on YouTube and you say Berlin 1920s, so it's one of the it's a colorized video. Originally, it's black and white, and it has just some music on it. Well, there is like really a lot that was going on. So where did he live? Well, again, and this is another interesting correlation with my tour on the Russian immigration after the revolution. So you may remember that in Berlin, there is a neighborhood called Charlottenburg, and this area happened to have so many immigrants from the Russian Empire that at some point, people started calling it Charlottengrad rather than Charlottenburg because of I would say I would uh, really big Russian population. And in Charlottenburg, there is a church, and this is already a bit of a later period. There is a church, and this church appears on many photographs, by the way, of him. He started in Charlottenburg. We believe that he also lived not far from the center of the neighborhood, but the only address that we know of is the Regensburger Strasse 26. This is not the house he lived in. That house was destroyed during the Second World War, and we're soon going to wrap it up because the next tour is quite soon, in 20 minutes from now, but we have a couple more minutes. So I would like to just wrap it up kind of at a logical place. So this is the modern house, but his house used to be exactly on this very spot. And we know also that he was frequent in a lot of cafes, trendy cafes, bars, and he mingled. He was a friend and I would say the center of attention in many communities of Russian immigrants. And he was very well known in Charlottengrad. That we know for sure. And we also know that he gave concerts all across Berlin, and he was recognized, welcomed, and he didn't feel an outcast. For sure, we know that many Germans did feel like that. We spoke about, not Germans, but the Russian immigrants in Germany, they felt, I would say, much of an outcast, much of outsiders. He definitely was not. So we know for sure that at least one reason for him to go to the Soviet Union uh, can be completely dismissed. He did feel like home in Berlin. He clearly had means to stay in Berlin. He had enough attention. He was welcomed. He had a lot of women in his life. There are a lot of photographs of him with different women taken approximately at one of the same time. Around the same period of time. Whether he a girlfriend every week, or maybe he had several girlfriends at one of the same time. We don't know, but he definitely felt he was, maybe he wasn't completely, he didn't feel like home 100%, but clearly he didn't feel like, fish out of water in Berlin. That we know for sure. So this is where I would like to put it on hold. Next time we're going to see how Berlin started to change in the photographs of Evgeny Henkin, starting from the Anne Fall, and I would say quite wild life of this gentleman in Berlin, and then we'll see how things would change in the photographs with the rise of Hitler in the 1930s. So this is it for now. Let me open up the chat. Sorry, I kind of skipped the Q&A, but I wanted to make sure I show you as much as possible. And again, I don't want to turn it into a long series of talks, but I believe we need at least one episode. We'll see if we need the fourth one, but I hope we won't. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, those of you who missed the first episode, it is still available on my YouTube channel. You can find the link through my website as well. For those who joined a little later, let me share with you the links once again. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much. I'll just put up the links that are most relevant. So the Stalin could make an original decoration for Sukkot. ah, Dolly. You're hilarious. Sorry. Uh-huh. And the next episode of the Henkin Brothers is over here. There you go. This is the link. Next weekend, it should be, yes, it's 19th of October. It's next Sunday. Again, it's either going to be the last or the last but one episode. And, I would appreciate your support. You could send me a PayPal donation. You could buy me a coffee. Thank you those who have already done that. And let me see. There are other questions. Did Russians have to have photos of Stalin in their homes? Yes. It's not like there would be raids and you would be checked if you have photos. You had to have photos in the official institutions, but the love, of Stalin, just the love of people was very strong indeed. It was very common to have photos of the leaders. It was very common to have photos of Lenin. It was very common to have photos of Stalin. After that, photos of Khrushchev and other leaders like Brezhnev, it wasn't that common. Normally, official institutions. But with Stalin and Lenin, yes, that was very common. Very common. See you in Jerusalem in 15 minutes, Dorley. Uh, No, it's not a beer family. It's not Heineken. It's not the Heineken. No, no, no. It's Henkin brothers, and they have nothing to do with any beer families in Germany. No, they're not related at all. Thank you, Olga. I'm happy you made it to the tour. I hope now you've been able to see everything, and I hope you had a chance to look at what you missed of the first episode as well. It's common here with rabbis. Yes, I know it's common with rabbis in Israel, but I can't really compare. It's kind of very different powers, I would say. Thank you, Olga. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. I will see you in 15 minutes in Jerusalem, at least some of you. And I'm hoping mm, there are a lot, but Robert, there are a lot of photographs of Lenin and the kids. The thing is that the party knew very well that in order to raise the proper Soviet person, you had to start from the very beginning. So kids started to learn about Lenin the same time they would learn, they would be read like, bedtime stories, basically. So they kind of grew up with the Dedushka Lenin kind of thing. So it's quite common to see a lot of photographs of Lenin with kids. Well, not so many, but enough. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Sure, Cindy, most welcome. So once again, I would like to remind you that I no longer share direct Zoom links on Eventbrite, where I post all my tours. I mean that I do on my channels, on my Zoom or on my YouTube channel. But I share direct links either on the calendar, which means the calendar that there are two big groups on Facebook community. So that's where I share the direct links, and also on my newsletter. If you are subscribed to my newsletter, then you know that below the list of tours, there is always kind of a spreadsheet with direct links. And this is the easiest way for sure to access the tours, because sometimes I know it can be tricky with Eventbrite. Even I sometimes have issues with Eventbrite, so I know what it's like. I know, but I decided not to post direct links on Eventbrite because of the trolls and other people who just may feel like disrupting the Zooms. That's basically it. There's no other reason than that. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm taking a quick break before the next uh, trip, this time to Jerusalem. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon. Bye bye. And I will be sharing the recordings shortly, early this week. I mean, next week. I mean, the coming week.